Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and today we're finally going to be talking about the newest project from Jesse Wells, Middle. I've been criminally short on covering country and folk this year, so let's fix some of that with an independent artist who has seen a ton of buzz this past year, and you may have even seen across TikTok. Meet Jesse Wells. He's a country folk singer-songwriter from Arkansas who actually had a pretty interesting run in the 2010s under various underground bands, and also just under his surname, where his 2018 album Red Trees and White Trash has got a couple production credits from Dave Cobb and some critical acclaim if you were in the know. And for the record, I wasn't in the know. Even in an overworked burnout year where I covered so many albums like 2018, he was very much under my radar. But in 2024, he started blowing up big on TikTok with very direct, very political acoustic folk songs, where with the nasal rasp, the Bob Dylan comparison was kind of automatic. How much you bought into that is very much up to debate. I saw a lot of dismissive sneers at how direct and often how nerdy his writing style was, that he should have had his moment in the mid-2010s for millennials, and now he's chasing an audience too irony poisoned to care, which would be a better criticism if the songs weren't frequently incisive and pretty great, and now he's seen his most commercial success to date. He actually put out 2 albums in 2024, the first being Hell's Wells on the 4th of July, because of course, which had a lot of great ideas, but felt like more of a patchy TikTok compilation than a proper album, so naturally the second project was named Patchwork and tightened up considerably, and was pretty goddamn great as a result. I really wish I had gotten to it last year, and songs like Saint Steve Irwin, Let It Be Me, and Horcrux, they were excellent. But now we got another project that looks even more streamlined and polished, courtesy of Zach Bryan co-producer Eddie Spears, and, well, you know what, if we're going to continue the Bob Dylan comparison, this is him going electric, and among some folk purists has already sparked a similar debate. But truth be told, it's much closer to the slightly ramshackle brand of country that Zach Bryan was working in right now than anything near Nashville. Still pretty raw because, let's be honest, there's no way in hell you're going to temper Wells' voice, which remains an acquired taste, especially when he really pushes his register like on the re-recording of Fear is the Mind Killer, and especially all the hollering on Why Don't You Love Me, which absolutely feels kind of forced, but as a country emo fan that likes Rustin Kelly, it eventually kind of hit the right spot for me, but with also more burly grooves and robust arrangements, like that killer fiddle on Horses, the warmer interplay on Anything But Me with the pedal steel accents, the sharper alternative-leaning gallop behind Rocket Man and War is a God, and the slight wheedling jangle of Wheel that quietly became one of my favorite understated hooks thus far in 2025. And for the most part, I'd say the bigger arrangements work. Fear is the Mind Killer as a pure acoustic cut always felt kind of vocally oversold, so ramping up the snarl guitar with mournful strings and nestling him a little tighter into the mix becomes more effective. And it's not as if this project doesn't have those spare moments or something closer to traditional folk or country, like the gentle twang of Every Grain of Sand and some of the cycling acoustics of Simple Gifts, or the very bare bones title track with every touch of harmonica, because of course there's a harmonica. But this sort of singer-songwriter material lives and dies on the lyrics and content, where there's gonna be no reasonable comparison to Bob Dylan and the obvious influence, so I'm not going to make that comparison, especially as I do hear the growth from the rougher snippets on Hell's Wells, both in terms of the poetic flow and the thematic depth. Wells' writing has always felt like prodding at a raw nerve, with cultural reference points updated to feel both millennial and kind of accessible, even a little bit nerdy, but Middle feels like reckoning with the larger scope, complexity, and emotional consequences to that prodding. To match the expanded production, the scope of the writing feels bigger, albeit a little bit less specific than the venom underscoring a lot of Hell's Wells, less immediately topical, but probably more timeless for the trouble. And right from Horses, he's feeling the toll of a world that can't fall into the easy binaries and only seems to get worse the more he might want to cling to simplicity, later directly echoed on Simple Gifts, where he envies the ability to not care about a complicated and messy world. And that theme gets even messier by the subtext of a pretty rough breakup, where he knows that he's somewhat at fault, and that underscores I'm sorry and anything but me, and especially why don't you love me. Bad relationships and emotional separations, they often encourage a lack of nuance in the moment, especially from guys who would rather just call the girl crazy than get more introspective about where they might be at fault, which is a lesson that I'm not even sure Bob Dylan struggled to learn well. And that's not saying the political elements aren't here either. If Wells has a more defined target on this project, it's the hucksters, the preachers, the con men who would preach simplicity and fundamentalism with no care for the larger affect, with Rocket Man feeling very targeted to a certain ketamine-abusing, video game cheating racist billionaire in the wake of those who just can't afford to be as futurist if they're trying to and struggling to live. And War is a God feels like the natural sequel to War Isn't Murder in highlighting the ugly human consequences. Not so much give peace a chance coming out of the 60s, but a horrified realization that war appeals to the same lack of reason or answers that same emotionality, where it's easier than thinking or trying to come together. And that leaves the title track less looking for compromise, more just trying to find common ground that we all share, especially when we all come in and go out the same way as the devil saws on the fiddle. Acceptance of a mosaic of difference rather than any sort of easy answer. But in short, oh wow, this was the sort of surprise that exactly what I needed for this year. The sort of proof that Wells not only could expand his sound, but engage with deeper complexity while not losing his unique brand of poetry. Where it might not hit as immediately hard as Patchwork or Hell's Wells, at least in terms of topicality, but it might be better for it. If it doesn't wind up among my top favorites of 2025, it's gonna be damn close. You've probably heard this before I did, but if you haven't, wow. You need to check this out. It's something special. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Again, I feel a little crazy that I was late to this guy because, again, he would have been entirely up my alley last year, and really this album was all the more proof of that, and the expansion of his sound. I'm not going to push back on that. I like hearing a little bit more sonic diversity, and it really does pay off in the writing here, which again, not as immediate. It might take a bit to fully grip with you, but when it does, it really does. And yeah, I think this is special. And again, if you guys have any comments beyond that, please leave them down there below. Or hell, and if you guys want to get involved in helping support the channel, maybe getting albums onto my schedule, yelling at me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships are available. Once again, don't feel obligated. Tough times, I understand, but the option is available if you want. And also, by the way, Jesse Wells, please manage to flesh out a way to actually buy your music, get merch, maybe tour up in Canada. That'd be pretty rad too. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.